Elizabeth Chappell, a lifelong entrepreneur who finally found my niche. After years of new ideas and jumping from business to business, I figured out how to turn a craft into a successful career. In 2016, I started a monthly subscription box for quilters. That little startup has grown into a thriving, multiple six-figure business that I am so proud of. As a published author, designer of fabrics and patterns being sold throughout the world, my favorite thing to do is to teach others how to grow a career of their dreams. Each week, you'll hear from me or from other guests who are creative entrepreneurs, so you can learn exactly what to do and what not to do to grow a career that's more rewarding and successful than you ever thought possible. If you're ready to turn your craft into a career that you love, I am so excited you're here. Welcome to the Craft to Career podcast. Welcome to the Craft to Career podcast. This week I have a friend who is also a published author times 3, and she is here to talk about how she has gotten these book deals, what that's looked like for her business, and how she's grown her quilty career. Now, this can be applied across all different, whether you're a quilter or a crafter, the tips you're going to learn from my friend today cross the quilting borders. They can go into all different areas of being an entrepreneur. And I cannot wait to introduce you to Wendy, the Weekend Quilter. First, I'm going to read a review. But before we jump in and you meet Wendy, I want to share something really exciting that I just found out about. I just found out that the Craft to Career podcast is the top 1% of podcasts globally. That blew my mind. And that is thanks to, in large part, to those of you who left a review for the podcast and to those who come and listen to the podcast each week. Thank you for being here. And if you have not left a rating or a review of the podcast, please take just a moment to go and do that. It makes the world of difference for this podcast, for being able to be around, being able to be seen by others. And if you have found this podcast by someone sharing the podcast with you, if you can pay it forward by telling another fellow entrepreneur about the podcast, letting them know about this so that they can get tips and grow their crafty career just like you have. So let's go ahead and read a review. This comes from JCT Quilting. They wrote a top-notch podcast. I look forward to Elizabeth's new episode every week. They are so informational and well done, and the guests are phenomenal. I really appreciate the latest episode where Elizabeth was vulnerable and shared her thoughts behind shifting her business focus going forward. The insights she shared are invaluable. You can tell she truly cares about her audience and about helping them successfully grow their business. So thank you so much for this review. And honestly, because of these kinds of reviews that I know that you guys like to hear behind the scenes, the vulnerable, like what's happening right now? What are the thoughts that are going through my mind? What changes am I making in real time? So I'll continue to do that. Thank you again for this review. And now let's jump in and let me introduce you to Wendy of The Weekend Quilter. Wendy, thank you so much for being here on the Craft to Career podcast. For our listeners, can you introduce who you are in the quilting world?
Sure. Thank you so much again for having me on the podcast. Anyway, so my name is Wendy Chow. You might also know me as the Weekend Quilter. I design and write quilt patterns. I'm also the author of 3 books. You may have heard of Urban Quilting, the Quilted Home Handbook, as well as my new title, which you might not be familiar with just yet. It's called First Words with Quilted Friends. And I also co-host a podcast called Quilt Buzz. And yeah, did I tell you where I was based? I don't think I have, actually. So you can probably hear it in my voice right now. I am originally from Perth, Australia, which is on the West Coast. And I'm based in New York City. So yeah.
Okay, so much to unpack here. And I have this curious brain, so I want to know everything. How did you end up in New York from Australia? Let's start there.
Yeah, let's start from there. So let me just go back. Let's go back in time. I'm trying to remember. I think this was probably about 2014. I think pretty sure 2014. Anyway, I came to New York or to the US actually for a summer program as part of my like master's in marketing program. And one of the pit stops were actually New York City. And I've never been to the US before. And this was kind of like my big first solo trip as well. And so I told my aunt about it and she's like, oh, I know someone that lives there. So it actually turns out to be one of her really good friend's son. And that's my husband now.
No way.
And so she introduced me to him. She's like, oh, look, at least there's a contact there. And if anything happens or goes wrong, you could reach out to him and whatnot. So we met actually on the final night that I was in New York City and we hit it off. Actually, I didn't really want to meet him in the first place. I thought it would be like an older guy. It would be really boring. But it turned out to this guy's really cool. But I was like, nah, this is too crazy. Like doing long distance with like a guy in New York City, like that's too far fetched. But yeah, anyway, we kept in touch for like nearly every day for 6 months. And then there was something I really wanted from the US, but they didn't ship to Australia. So then I asked him to do me a solid. And then when I opened the package, there was air tickets to go see him again, but in Singapore. And then I met and the rest was history. So we did long distance for 4 years. And then I relocated to the US, got married first and then relocated. And here I am. And it's been nearly 5 years since all of this, since we've been married. So yeah, but this is the long story.
Yeah, no, I really like
the long-winded version.
So, and now I've got to know, what was the solid? What was the thing you wanted that he shipped to you?
Okay, so there were like a pair of shoes from Saks, and then they were like horseshoe head, but I think like because it was, I know this sounds really wrong. I'm sorry, guys. But anyway, they're like shoes like that are made of horseshoe hair on the outside. And then I think because the Australian customs or something about Australia, they didn't want that to be coming in. So yeah, I don't know. But anyway, so I just asked Brian to help me out and yeah.
Nice. And he sent you some tickets to Singapore along the way.
Yeah, I know. It was kind of scary because if you think about it, like I'm meeting a guy that I've only met once again in person, and I'm going overseas as well. But at least Singapore is a really safe place, and it was like only a 5-hour plane ride from Perth. So it's just as far as flying to Sydney from Perth. So,
oh wow!
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't realize. I've never been to Australia. I didn't realize how big it is.
It's huge. Like I think a lot of the times people forget how big Australia is. It's kind of like relative to like flying from like New York to LA. Yeah.
Wow. Well, and yeah, I mean, I've read Leanne Moriarty's books, and they'll talk about like the West Coast, the East Coast, the different. And I'm like, I can't get my head around it. But very cool. So, and then you were studying business marketing. That's what brought you to New York.
Yeah, that's right. And it was through like an Australian university that I did that program, which is like a study abroad program, which was really cool.
So, but now I think quilting is your main career. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. It's kind of really strange how I fell into quilting as my career, really. And again, it just comes back to me relocating to the US. So actually, before I moved to the US, I actually worked in a marketing research and consulting agency for 7 years. So it's quite a long time. And obviously, I had to quit my job coming to the US. Which I did. And then the first year of being in the US, I was actually fun employed. It was kind of really, really a big adjustment, actually, the first couple of months, because I'm so used to working long hours, and it was pretty bad, I guess. It was a pretty unhealthy workplace, but I was working like through the early hours, as well as throughout the weekends as well. So it was pretty bad. But yeah, so the first year I couldn't work because I was waiting for my work permit to be approved. So I really just spent that time focusing on the weekend quilter, which I had started that way well before I moved over. So I started back in 2017, and it was really just a platform for me to what's it called? To, by, making connections and networking through there and having to be consistent and actually like sharing what you're working on, that actually really held me accountable to live more of a balanced work life. Because like I said, like the hours that I worked in my corporate life was pretty bad.
I've thought about this recently. What has happened in our world that we've become so obsessed with working hard and long hours? And it's like a badge of honor, a little bit of like, I'm successful. Like, what if we just relaxed and went out to the beach? What if that was success? I don't know.
Yeah.
I've thought about that.
I know. I think there's just some sort of guilt for not being productive.
Yeah.
Is probably the reason why. And I kind of felt like that too. And it's like, yeah, I'm pulling out these long hours, but you burn out so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of did feel like that, honestly, like in the first couple of years of being like, turning the weekend quilter into full-time, especially when things did get a bit more serious where like, you get paid opportunities. I'm writing a book and it's like, okay, like you got to get this done, but also trying to balance what you're trying to bring out as well on your own page,
mm-hmm.
because a lot of the times when you are collaborating with these other brands or you're working on a book, you actually can't share any of that immediately either. So it's a lot of work that I definitely have learned to kind of slow down and actually take some time off, because that's the benefit of working for yourself, right? You can take as much time off that you want, and you have more flexibility as well.
Absolutely. I'm curious what it was how did it start? When were you like, oh my goodness, this could actually become a career? Like, what was that chain of events? How did that happen?
Yeah. So I didn't really have that, like aha moment, like, oh my God, I can really turn this into a business. The opportunity actually really presented itself. I think it was just right time, right place. I was just kind of surprised, like, really? Like, you want to do this with me? All right, sure. So this was, so I actually got, and again, I think we're going to touch on this a little bit later, but I'm just kind of like, you're like, we are jumping the gun right now. Anyway, so actually end of 2019, or maybe like September 2019, actually, a publishing house reached out to me, which is my current publisher. And they're saying like, hey, like, would you like to write a quilting book? And at the time I only had 5,000 followers on Instagram. And in my mind, I was like, what the heck? Like, for real? Like, really? Do you want to work with me? Like, I only have 5,000 followers. Like, okay, sure. And then obviously there was like a lot of back and forth. We're trying to negotiate the contracts and everything. And at the time I was like, oh God, like, oh, well, I don't have a work permit yet. And I had done a ton of other interviews as well in, I wanted to work for like Etsy in their like marketing research team, or like a bunch of other like big corporate jobs or corporate like companies as their like analysts or marketing research person. A lot of them actually told me like, no, we can't proceed with the next round of interviews because you don't have a work permit. And at the time, like, like everything was just up in the air in terms of trying to like wait for visas and work permits. Like it's such a long process. And like even more recently, I know I'm going a little off tangent, but like it took me like 18 months to get my like 10-year green card extension as well. So like it's just insane. But anyway, coming back to your question, I actually then signed my book deal officially with my publisher like 3 days after I got my work permit. So I never really had the opportunity to really think about like, can I make this into a reality or not? Because, if you think about it, like, I can't write a book plus work a full-time corporate job. And like, if I think back, like the hours they were really crap. Like, yeah, like there is no way I could do it. I'll be like up 24/7, literally.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I'm very curious, when you decided to take the book contract, was there a conversation of like, am I going to do this or should I take this other career? I guess you didn't have the options because of the visa.
Yeah, I didn't really have the options. And I think like my husband, he was really supportive. And I was like, do you think I should do this? Like, and he's like, just do it. Like, you're not going to have this opportunity again.
Mm-hmm.
And like the bragging rights to be like, hey, I wrote a book.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So, okay, I am so curious. Have you talked with your publisher? Why did they reach out to you? Everyone listening, myself included, is like, wait, what? How did they find you?
I know. I did ask them. I can't really remember the reason why, but they were like, I think they just kind of took a gamble at me, and yeah, that was really it. Yeah.
They've got a good team out scouting, looking for people that they did a good job.
Yeah.
Now, okay, if this wasn't including you, you'll be like, no, thanks, Elizabeth, for bringing that up. But there was like years ago in Martha Stewart magazine, like quilters to be aware of. And I swear you were on that list. Am I right?
Yeah, I was. Yeah. Okay. I think it was like the 50 or like 25 quilters to be aware of. I can't that was, my God, that was like 2021, I think.
Which seems like yesterday to me. I don't know what that says about me. So I remember that list coming out and I was like, well, but they were right. They weren't wrong. Like you were on there. Emily Dennis is on there. It was a great list. I was like, dang.
Yeah, it was a really good list. I was surprised. Like I can't remember who tagged me in it on Instagram. And I was like, wait, what?
Thanks, Martha.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So, okay. Well, now I would love to chat specifically about being published. And clearly it went well because they kept like, let's do another book. Let's do another book. And I have to say, I went to London, I don't even know, 2022. And I walked in a big department store and I looked in the book section and your book was there. I was
no
like,
way. Oh my God. You should have taken a photo of it. Oh my God. I would have died.
I have to look. I think I may have.
All right. Yeah. Oh my God. That's awesome. I'm so excited.
So things I want to discuss. What are the pros and cons? Now, granted, you've never self-published, I don't think, right?
No, I have never self-published at all, no.
So if here I am, let's just pretend someone's asking you because they are, but if someone were to ask you, would you want to go with a publisher or self-publish? Like in your perspective, what are the pros and cons?
Okay, so I would personally I think maybe I might have a biased perspective only just because my only experience has been with a publisher, but I think I would no matter what, I think I would go back to a publisher only just because they have the resources to do the marketing for you. They do the distribution for you. And I guess it also just depends on which publishing house you're working with as well. So the one that I'm working with, they are a sister company. They're a smaller company within the Penguin Random House company, which I'm sure many of you guys have heard before. And with that association, you kind of have like best of both worlds. You have like kind of like boutique you can kind of sort of say like boutique agency, like where you get immediate responses where, or like you can get things moving along quicker. Whereas if you worked in a larger company, you may have to go through a few various teams or people, maybe like through legal or I don't know, someone else that manages whatever you're trying to do. But anyway, having a publishing house behind you really helps out a lot in terms of marketing the book. They have great ideas as well as just the support in making sure it goes out to the correct retailers. So yeah, that's really it. And that really just takes off a lot of pressure off of you. And especially if you're a new author as well and you don't really know how that process works, that is a huge help. And really, if you like, the only sort of distribution that I do is just whatever the books that are sold online in my store. So like if like any of the books that are on Amazon or like from any of your big box retailers, like I don't need to worry about that, or managing wholesale to smaller businesses either. Like I don't need to lift a finger.
Yep. And like this shop in London, they've done that work for you. They got this book out, so.
Yeah, like I did not have to do anything. I didn't have to ship or mail anything to them. I did not have to liaise with them because they can liaise with the publishing house in getting all that sorted. Yeah. So it helps out a lot.
It's nice too. You don't have to take the financial gamble up front. You don't have to buy the books, store the books, print on demand, none of that. Like they just do it all for you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So what doors have opened for you since publishing your first book? And has it snowballed and grown bigger and bigger since you've published more books?
I mean, it really has built up my legitimacy and brand recognition, which it's helped out a lot in, presenting many other brand partnerships. I can't exactly attribute it to the book per se, but like I do believe that there is some influence behind that for sure. And then, it's also allowed me to kind of step out of my comfort zone in terms of teaching. And that's kind of been sort of my focus this year as well. And I think because by having a book, they're like, oh, well, Wendy, you're knowledgeable in this area. We believe that you would be able to teach. So it's just things like that, or like even just to be able to speak at local guilds as well, do some show and tells. So those sort of things. So, yeah.
Yeah. And you just got back from Austin.
That's right. I was like, I don't know how I am still awake right now, but I am. Yes. I just got back from Austin. We went to the annual Brother Dealer Conference, so the Brother Experience event. And it was a lot of fun, just meeting all the different dealers and be able to share, the new products that Brother has coming out. So it's very exciting. Yeah, for sure. And getting to hang out with all the other brand ambassadors.
Okay. So you're a brand ambassador. That's like the official title of what you do with Brother.
That's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And when did that happen that you became that?
Probably about 2 years ago. Yeah.
So after your first book was published?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
After the first book. Yeah.
So, okay, I have your first two books, and they're beautifully done. I have to say.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, just the quality of the book, everything about it. So how long did it take you to make each book?
Yeah, so the process was probably about 18 months from signing the dotted line to actually having a book in hand and then starting to have it distributed into bookstores and libraries, that kind of thing, to consumers. Yeah. That's the word. Yeah.
Impressive. Where did you write? Did you write in a Word document in Adobe? Like what did that process look like?
Yeah. So I let's rewind a little bit. So I started all the designs on Pre-Quilt, which is a quilting design app. It's a web-based design app. You might be familiar from your like pattern writing course, or I'm sure many other people have been playing around with the digital coloring pages and stuff. But yes, my design started there, and then I would write them in. I would write the individual patterns as separate documents so it's easier to keep track of, because eventually it would be, I think we ended up on 400, 500 pages, maybe even more on the second book. I can't remember. Anyway, so going off track a little bit. But yeah, I wrote the patterns on Word document because it was just easier for us to track, do the track changes. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we did that, and then it gets edited and reviewed a lot. We have the tech editors as well as a few number of editors. So there's probably 3 or 4 people have looked at it multiple times. Mm-hmm. And then once we've got the copy down, and that's when we then lay out all the pages on InDesign, which I don't do that. And again, that's another benefit of having a publisher is they do have a designer, and then you just work together. Obviously, before that, you kind of provide them a bit of a vision on what you'd like, and they'll do a sort of a draft version of what one pattern would look like, and then if you're happy with that, then we'll move on, and then we'll duplicate and follow that format going forward. And we also before that happens, we have to do the photography as well, which takes quite a bit of time. So for the 2 books, I think we definitely did at least 3 or 4 sessions for the whole book. And it was obviously you'd had to photograph them, style it, photograph it to make it look realistic. Mm-hmm. just so that it helps the person visualize it, like, hey, like, can I have this at home or not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you say sessions, do you mean like you hired a photographer and you go to a studio, or like what
yeah. So the first book was really interesting. It was a very interesting time in the world, and that was during COVID. So I did all the writing in my bedroom. It was really weird, but yeah, I did it in my bedroom because we're in the midst of renovating our home, and the only place in the home that was done up was the bedroom. So I was doing all the writing there, and then we did one session of photography at my friend's apartment. And then afterward, the city went into shutdown. So the New York City went into shutdown, I think, March 15 or 16, 2020. And then we did the shoot on March 13. Like I clearly remember that day. It was just such a weird day in the city. And from there on, we're just kind of like, okay, well, we'll just wait. We'll just check in with each other like every other week. And then it became every month to see when we can meet again. But obviously the city wasn't open up again. Like it took like 4 to 5 months. But yeah, like a session would be, and then the first books, all the photography after that was all done in my apartment. That was like kind of half done. So like the cover of the first book was actually my bedroom. Our
really?
bedroom. Yeah. So it was just kind of a really weird, strange time. And then with the second book, obviously, I mean, COVID was still around. There was like different variants. So we still had to be really careful with that. But it was great because I was able to go out and not have to photograph in my home. And then I discovered this website called a Peer Space, which is very similar to like, I guess you could call it like the Airbnb for photography and videography. So people rent out their homes or maybe a studio space where you can actually do, product photography or shoots, whatnot. So we picked out 3 different homes out in Brooklyn, and we just logged all the stuff out there. And it was kind of crazy as well, thinking back, because what was it? A lot of the homes there, they were all walk-ups. So we had to like lug 2 giant suitcases of just stuff on like a 4-story walk-up. It was kind of bananas.
What's a walk-up? I don't know what that is.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So a walk-up is like an apartment building or a building that does not have an elevator, because a lot of the homes in the city, like they're old, right?
Yeah.
Like these buildings, like the building that I live in is like at least 100 years old. It used to be a garment factory.
Oh, cool.
So like, yeah, I know now it's a quilt factory now. Oh my God. But yeah, like there were no elevators. So you just have to take the stairs.
With all those okay, I have a new appreciation for all that went into.
Yeah. That's right. So like if you're looking for an apartment to live in, or maybe like an Airbnb, even though like kind of like illegal in the city, but
whatever. That's another topic that we'll talk about.
Yeah, that's another hot topic. It's like another New York problem.
Yes.
But yeah, like you just need to be aware of that. Make sure that the building is not a walk up. Like, you might have a great price, but then when you rock up there, you're like, oh my God, I have to walk up all these stairs.
20 stories. All right. I guess it's a workout, but if you can, I mean, I'm surprised.
Yeah. Like usually it's up to like a 5-story like walk up, like but I recently heard someone told me that they live on a 7th-floor walk up, and I met some lady with her corgi, and she's like, oh yeah, like the corgi kind of like stops after like the 3rd or 4th floor. But yeah. Anyway, I'm going so off tangent.
Well, no, I'm gonna indulge in that. So you have a corgi, and actually we like went to dinner years ago in Houston.
Yeah. This was like Houston 2021 at like Quilt Festival.
Yeah. That's right. I'm like, when and why? But we hadn't had a dog yet. And I was asking you, and you literally like made me go across the decision point, and we got a dog after chatting with you. And you were my go-to. Like, thank you. I would be like, okay, what should I get? Where should I get the clothes? Da, 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 you know? And
Yeah.
you have an Instagram for your dog, right?
I do. Yeah. She's detective.truffle.
All right. Perfect. So that's kind of a fun little tidbit. So, okay, back to the books. I'm very curious about your third book because it's your first two are more traditional, like what you would think of. Can you tell us about the third one?
Yeah, so I'll be releasing my third title, which is called First Words with Cute Quilted Friends, and the pub date for that is September 22nd. It's a completely different concept in comparison to the first two titles, like you mentioned earlier. So the book is a hardboard First Words book, and it's geared towards parents and grandparents who appreciate the art of quilting, or simply a parent or grandparents that are looking for something that's unique and engaging first word book for their child or grandchild, or maybe it's for a friend. So all the illustrations are by me, and I use foundation paper piecing, a quilting technique to form them. And yeah, the book makes a wonderful addition for quilters that, if you're making a baby quilt for your friend or a loved one, that's a perfect addition to your gift.
Yeah. That is so cute. I cannot wait to see it. So how did this idea come about?
Yeah, so it's very different, like like I mentioned. So the publisher, it was actually inspired by the publisher's daughter, and let me start again. So the idea is actually quite different. So it actually came about from the publisher's daughter. So it was inspired by her, and they were at the time working on a crochet book on I can never say it. I think it's aragumi, the crochet stuffed animals. Mm-hmm. So she was going through those books. I think they were editing it at the time, and she was pointing at the animals, and that kind of then kind of snowballed into the First Words with Crochet Friends, which is done by Lauren Espy. Yeah, so she did the First Words book first, and then afterward their publisher approached me and asked hey, do you want to do a quilted version of it? And I was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. So the time frame for that was shorter than the previous two books. I think this took me just under 1 year. And it was a big learning curve for me because I've done foundation paper piecing before, but really intricate foundation paper piecing designs. No, I haven't done that. And I don't know how to use Illustrator. I originally wanted to do it on PowerPoint. I was like, I got this. All the lines will click into place. But then I eventually caved in and I was like, okay, I really need to do Illustrator because I can't get those angles, those precise angles right. I just ended up kind of figuring it out myself, and then it all worked out, thank God, because it would be pretty bad if I signed the contract and sorry guys, can't do it. But it worked out. It's been really good because I've now been able to integrate Illustrator into my day-to-day pattern writing as well, because before I was doing Photoshop and PowerPoint, and I'm going to admit it, I still use PowerPoint to lay out my quilt patterns.
Do you really?
Yes, I do. I too cheap to pay for InDesign, so I use PowerPoint, and just everything just clicks. But obviously, I do all the illustrations on Illustrator beforehand, and then export them as PNGs, and bam.
It works.
It works all the time.
I love it. So, okay. The books have clearly been successful because the publishers have come back and said, let's do another. Has it been lucrative for you? Is this a career that you're this is sustaining our life, family?
It's definitely a nice additional revenue stream, and it's more of a passive income because for the lifetime of the book, and obviously if you got sales, then you then get money into your bank account every quarter. So it's a really just slow return, but I can definitely see that, it's something worthwhile long term. And I definitely, have broke even on the cost. So yeah, it's been good. Yeah.
And do you see yourself wanting to do more books in the future?
Yeah, definitely. Even though it is a lot of work for sure, but it's so rewarding to see all that hard work that you've put into for at least 12 months, right? And then to see something really like physical and then have the bragging rights and like even like what you said, like you saw my book in London, like the heck, like it's pretty freaking cool.
It really
if
is.
you think about it. Yeah. So it's really cool. And it's also like, again, like, even though like you're not going to get like bad, like this, like, am I allowed to swear?
Yes.
Like, it's not like, you know, like when you first publish your book, like, it's not like you're going to get like a shit ton of money, like right away. It, again, like, it's just one of those things that takes a while to return. But like, in addition to having the book, like you have legitimacy and brand recognition, which then leads to so many other opportunities, like teaching or maybe having brand partnerships with other people, which then pay you. And, you know, the list goes on. That's why it's just kind of one of those things that, yeah, like you have to spend so much time, so much effort at the beginning, and it's like, all for what? But like, it's more of a long-term game is what I'm trying to say. So, yeah.
I feel like to really, I could be persuaded otherwise, but right now I feel pretty strongly about it. To have long-term success in a business, you have to think long-term. Like a lot of times people are like, well, how can I have success immediately? But things like SEO for your website, it takes time. It's the slow burn. These things that take a little more time and the payoffs maybe a little slower, longer down the road, I feel like will help with the long-term game, like you said.
Yeah, for sure. Like even just building relationships with other businesses, or even just talking to someone that is not within your industry or like is got like a couple of hundred followers. Like you just never know what they can do or what roads it could lead you to. So just treat everyone kindly and be open to sharing, you know, what you have, and you know, it'll come to you as well. So yeah.
Absolutely. And what advice would you have for someone who is maybe thinking of starting a quilty or crafty career?
Yeah. So what I've found works for my business is consistency in relationships. So being consistent, consistently present and making and sharing, or like consistently creating new relationships, like, and cultivating them. So like, in other words, like, be like, by always like creating and sharing, it leads to discovery and opportunities. And then that forges new business relationships for future ventures and brand building. So kind of like similar to my situation with like the book deal. Like I just continued sharing. I only had 5,000 followers and here I am, you know? And from the very start, and again, like sort of like, what I mentioned earlier, like from the very start, I believed in engaging and networking with everyone, whether they are a big company, they're your competitor, they're your influencer within or outside your industry, or simply someone that is new to the craft. You know, you could really learn a thing or two and pave a way for future opportunities, collaborations, and develop professionally through these conversations. I know it's a lot of work involved, but like keeping that up, like, you know, it's a long-term game, but the opportunities that come with it are so rewarding. So yeah, like my whole thing is, I guess, is just all about the long-term, and just slow and steady, you know, wins the race.
It's true. So are you an extrovert? Because I can see a lot of people in the quilting community specifically who are like, how do you make these connections and, you know, all that?
Yeah. 100% extrovert. Like I am definitely an extroverted person, but I think because when I moved to the US, I became even more extroverted because I wanted to make my own friends when I first moved. Like, not that like I didn't like the friends that I met through my husband, but like I just wanted some like form of separation, and it's like that I could talk to him about. That's like, you know, we don't 100% have something in common. Like he's not into quilting and crafting. Like, forget about it. But I could tell him about it. Like even like the trip that I just came back, I was like, oh my God, like we did all this stuff at Austin. It was so cool. Like all these new products, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, that's nice, babe.
Well, and I think I knew you were an extrovert at QuiltCon in 2020 in Austin. Seems like you go there a lot. You had like a mingle meet and greet or like happy hour or something at a hotel.
Oh my God, yes. Oh my gosh.
Which I'm an introvert. I'll be honest. I was like,
really
nervous to go. Yeah. So I didn't go. Yes.
Oh my God.
But
oh my God, when you said 2020 Austin QuiltCon, oh my God, that feels like a lifetime ago.
it was like a different world.
Yeah.
It was pre.
I think we did that because we were just launching the Quilt Buzz podcast. And then that was pre-launch. And then we're like, hey, let's get everyone together. And it was a lot of fun. I missed that a lot, actually. Yeah.
Well, you'll have to do it again. So wherever,
whatever, wherever we're going.
Yeah, exactly. And I have to really just say how much I want to emphasize, like, you had a following of 5,000. And I see sometimes where people are like, they'll use that as maybe an excuse a little bit of like, well, but I don't have anything to offer, or they kind of hide behind, but it was a very much like, no, I will share. I'll do whatever I can with whatever I've got. And just kind of that proactive, I don't know, what do you call that?
Yeah. It's just continuing to share, like making and sharing and offering something to the table that, you know, like it might be just offering like inspiration to someone, or maybe a tip that's been out there like forever, or being like gone viral and you're doing it again. Like, and you know, it might even just be your personality that people are attracted to. So I feel like it doesn't really matter about like the numbers. Like numbers are just numbers. I think like the whole thing about followers, it's just kind of old, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
We're not really going after that anymore. It's just really about engagement. And even though, like, you know, I've seen people, or like, you know, even though you might have like hundreds and thousands of followers on your Instagram or your social media account, how engaged are those people are, and, you know, how much of that can they return back to you? Do you know what I mean? Like, are they going to buy your pattern? Are they going to do X, Y, Z? Do you know what I mean? Like, so it doesn't matter about the number. It's just a matter about the quality that you have.
And I feel
quality, not quantity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like too, it's building a sort of community. Like you've done
That's
that
right.
with the podcast. So anyone who has a community and it feels like a friendship and these are your people, like that, it doesn't matter if you have a large audience or small audience, you've got your people, you know?
That's right. Yeah. Like even with our podcast guests, like we even reach out to people that have like, I don't know, 1,000 followers or less than 5,000. We don't care. Like, you know, by the end of the day, we really just want to highlight what people do and the amazing work that they do and the different voice that they bring to the community as well, because the quilting community is so diverse. And a lot of the times I think like they kind of, you know, some people, we just don't get to see that side. So yeah.
I love it. So for our listeners who want to find you, where is the good place?
So they can find me at the.weekendquilter on Instagram, Pinterest, and Facebook. And you can go to my website as well. It is the-weekendquilter.com. Awesome.
And then your new book, it's called again?
Yeah, it's a long one, so I don't expect you to like remember. It took me a while to get used to it. I'm still trying to get used to it. It's called First Words with Cute Quilted Friends.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's cute. I like it.
Yeah, and it's like a cute little size, and the illustrations are really cute. And when you get to the dog picture, it's actually a picture of Truffle.
Yay!
So, yeah.
Okay, that's so fun. And that comes out September 22nd, you said?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. And did we say who your publisher? Yeah, you did. A Penguin House.
Yeah, so it's actually Page and Tate Co. or Blue Star Press, and then they're under Penguin Random House.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll look for that book. And thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Wendy, thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. It's such a pleasure to chat with you, as always. You're just so fun and real. And hearing about your success with publishing a book, it's just so cool to hear. And it gets my wheels turning and all of the things. I cannot wait to see this new book of yours that's more of like a children's hardcover. I can see myself gifting this to people down the road along with the gift of a quilt. So I cannot wait, and congratulations. Thank you for you listeners for being here. I'll be back next Friday with a brand new episode. And until then, have a wonderful week.